She was just a maid mopping the marble floors of a Korean Mafia boss's mansion, until his mistress pushed her down and laughed. What the mistress didn't know was that the boss himself stood watching from the shadows, and that single act of cruelty would ignite a dangerous obsession no one saw coming. Welcome to the channel. Happy New Year to you all. As we step into this new year, I want to wish our amazing community a year filled with love, breakthrough, and incredible new beginnings. I'm so glad you've joined us for another powerful story. Whether this is your first time here or you're a long-time listener, I'm thrilled to have you in our community. Before we get started, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. It's the best way to support the stories you love. Also, I love seeing how far our stories travel. Leave a comment below and let me know which part of the world you're watching from today. Now, let's jump straight into the story. Tae-dong's estate. Bella works in silence, a beautiful black American woman trapped in servitude, cleaning the floors of a world that refuses to see her. One vicious moment from a jealous mistress humiliates her in what should have been an empty hallway, but she isn't alone. A tattooed figure in a tuxedo witnesses everything, his calculating gaze fixed not on the woman who pushed, but on the woman who refused to break. As power begins to shift behind closed doors, loyalty is tested, and the maid everyone dismissed starts a ascent that will turn the hierarchy of the underworld upside down. The marble gleamed like black glass beneath Bella's knees. She moved the cloth in careful, meditative circles, erasing every trace of yesterday's extravagance. Champagne drops, heel scuffs, the faint residue of expensive perfume that clung to surfaces like ghosts of laughter she was never meant to hear. Her hands were raw, cracked at the knuckles despite the lotion she couldn't afford to replace. But the floors had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect. She had learned that lesson her first week. The estate sprawled across the hillside like a sleeping dragon. All sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city below in cold, glittering triumph. 40 rooms. 8 bathrooms. 3 kitchens. And Bella knew every corner, every baseboard, every place where dust dared to settle. She was invisible here, a shadow that moved through the halls before dawn and after dark, keeping the world beautiful for people who would never know her name. You missed a spot. Bella's shoulders tensed. She didn't need to look up to know who stood above her. The click of Louboutin heels on marble was unmistakable, sharp as a whip crack. There. The mistress's manicured finger pointed to a section Bella had just finished. And there. Honestly, do they just hire anyone off the streets now? Bella said nothing. She had learned that lesson too. Words were weapons you gave to your enemies. She dipped her cloth back into the bucket and began again, retracing her work while the mistress watched with the focused cruelty of a cat toying with something small and helpless. Minseo was her name, though Bella had only ever heard it whispered by the other staff, never spoken in her presence. She wore her beauty like armor. Crimson lips, skin like porcelain, hair that fell in a perfect dark sheet down her back. She belonged in this mansion. She belonged on Tae-dong's arm. Bella did not belong anywhere. Such dedication, Minseo cooed, circling Bella like a predator. Tell me, does scrubbing floors feel like home to you? Or are you just naturally suited for your knees? The other maids who'd been dusting the adjacent sitting room had vanished. They always did. Survival meant knowing when to disappear, and everyone in this house understood that Minseo's moods were weather systems best avoided. Bella wrung out her cloth, the sound of water trickling back into the bucket obscenely loud in the silence. Her reflection rippled in the dark marble beneath her. Distorted, barely human. Just a shape in a gray apron. I asked you a question. Minseo's voice hardened. Or are you too stupid to understand basic Korean? I understand. Bella's voice was quiet, careful. I'm sorry the floor wasn't to your standard. I'll make sure it's perfect. You'll make sure. Minseo laughed, the sound crystalline and cutting. As if anything you touch could ever be perfect. She turned then, her silk robe billowing behind her like a red sail, and Bella allowed herself one small shaking breath. But Minseo paused at the archway, glancing back over her shoulder with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, and Bella. The West Wing powder room. There's lipstick on the mirror. Apparently, your perfect work from this morning wasn't quite perfect after all. She tilted her head. Clean it again. All of it. Before Mr. Tay returns tonight. The West Wing. Bella's chest tightened. She'd spent 3 hours on the West Wing this morning. Every mirror had been spotless. But she nodded. Yes, ma'am. Mincio's smile widened. Such a good girl. So obedient. Then she was gone, her laughter echoing down the corridor like wind chimes made of ice. Bella remained on her knees long after the clicking heels faded. Her reflection stared back at her from the gleaming marble. Sad eyes, compressed lips, hands that wouldn't stop trembling. She had 7 months left on her contract. 7 months to pay off her family's debt. 7 months of being invisible. She picked up her bucket and headed toward the West Wing, where she knew she would find fresh lipstick smeared deliberately across clean glass. Bella thinks she's alone, but a shadow is moving. Stop right now, subscribe and tell me. Would you stay silent or fight back? You won't believe what happens next. Tae Dong didn't believe in coincidences. In his world, every action had a motive, every person a price, every smile a hidden blade. He'd built his empire on reading the spaces between words, the tremor in a handshake, the way men's eyes shifted when they lied. Survival required seeing what others missed. And he had seen her. Not just yesterday, when Mincio had pushed her to the floor with theatrical cruelty. He'd been seeing her for weeks, a ghost in gray moving through his home with the kind of quiet dignity that couldn't be faked. She never hurried, never complained, never met anyone's eyes. But her work was immaculate. The kind of attention to detail that spoke of discipline, pride, perhaps even desperation. Women like that didn't end up scrubbing floors unless something had gone terribly wrong. He sat now in his private office, the city sprawling below him through walls of glass, and rolled an unlit cigarette between his fingers. The room smelled of leather and expensive whiskey he never drank. On his desk, a single manila folder lay closed. He hadn't opened it yet. Part of him wanted to leave it that way, to let her remain a mystery, an anomaly in the carefully controlled ecosystem of his life. But Tae Dong didn't believe in mysteries either. Only incomplete information. You're sure about this? He spoke without looking up, his voice low and measured. Across from him, Jean Woo shifted his weight. His head of security was ex-military, built like a wall, with a scar that bisected his left eyebrow. He'd been with Tae Dong for 9 years and had learned to read the subtle gradations of his boss's moods the way sailors read the sea. Verified twice. Background check came back clean. Too clean, actually. Now Tae Dong looked up. Explain. Jean Woo pulled out his tablet, scrolling through a document. Isabella Morgan. 26. Born in Atlanta, moved to Seoul 8 months ago. Bachelor's degree in art history from Spelman College. Honors. Fluent in 3 languages. Before she came here, she was working as a museum liaison. He paused. She's overqualified for housekeeping by about a decade. Tae Dong's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Debt. Family medical expenses. Father had a stroke 2 years ago. Mother's been managing a restaurant that's barely staying afloat. Isabella, she took out loans to cover the hospital bills. When she couldn't keep up with payments, she borrowed from the wrong people. Who? Jean Woo's expression darkened. Young Enterprises. The loan shark operation running out of Itaewon. They've got connections to the Huang family. Tae Dong's fingers stilled on the cigarette. The Huangs. Second-tier players trying to claw their way up the hierarchy by preying on immigrants and foreign workers who didn't understand the system. Parasites dressed in suits. How much does she owe? Original loan was 20 million won. With their interest rates. Jean Woo shook his head. She's looking at 50 million now. Maybe more. They've got her on a 2-year contract as domestic labor. She works it off, or they go after her family. The office fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Tae Dong stood, moving to the window with his hands clasped behind his back. Below, the city pulsed with light and life and 1,000 small cruelties happening in the dark spaces between buildings. He'd grown up in those spaces. He knew their language. "She's educated, elegant, and desperate," he said quietly. "So they put her in an apron and let Mincio use her as a toy." "Looks that way." Taedong turned, his tattooed hands catching the low light from the desk lamp. The ink that wound up his wrists and disappeared beneath his collar was a map of every promise he'd made, every line he'd crossed, every person he'd failed to protect before he had the power to do so. He picked up the folder. "Find out which handler at Jung Enterprises holds her contract. I want a name, a location, and a full accounting of her debt structure by tomorrow morning." His eyes were cold, calculating. "And Jean Wu. This stays between us." Jean Wu nodded once and left without another word. Alone again, Taedong opened the folder. A photograph stared back at him, a graduation photo, probably from her university days. She was smiling, radiant, full of the kind of hope that Seoul had clearly beaten out of her. He studied that smile for a long moment, then closed the folder and locked it in his desk drawer. Some things, he thought, shouldn't be allowed to stay broken. Before I reveal the truth, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This twist changes everything. The mopping stick snapped with a sound like a bone breaking. Bella stared at the two pieces in her hands. Jagged wood, splintered and useless. Mincio stood 3 feet away, her chest rising and falling with exertion. Her face flushed with something that looked almost like pleasure. "Oops." The word dripped with false innocence. "I suppose you'll have to explain to housekeeping why you're so careless with equipment." It had happened so fast. Bella had been cleaning the conservatory, working around the forest of orchids that Mincio cultivated like expensive pets. She'd been careful, meticulous as always, but Mincio had appeared from nowhere, grabbed the handle mid-stroke and simply snapped it over her knee, just to watch Bella's face. Just because she could. "Yes, ma'am," Bella whispered, her fingers tightening around the broken wood. "I'll report it." "You do that." Mincio smoothed down her dress, ivory today, with pearls at her throat. "And do clean up this mess before Mr. Tay sees it. You know how he values order." Then she was gone, leaving only the cloying scent of her perfume and the wreckage of Bella's afternoon. Bella stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of the broken handle, the splinters pressing into her palm. She didn't cry. She'd learned not to waste water on things that wouldn't change. She finished the conservatory on her hands and knees with rags and a bucket, then reported the broken equipment to Mr. Park, the head of housekeeping. He'd sighed, made a note in his ledger, and told her a replacement would take 3 to 5 business days. In the meantime, she could share supplies with the other maids, which meant working twice as hard for half the resources, which meant more reasons for Mincio to find fault. Bella returned to her quarters near midnight, her back screaming, her hands raw. The staff wing was tucked into the eastern corner of the estate. Small rooms with narrow beds and barely functional heating. Hers was the size of a closet, but it was hers. A place to breathe without performance. She opened the door and froze. On her bed sat a wooden crate, elegant and out of place in the barren room. Beside it, a covered dish still radiating warmth. Bella's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced down the hallway, empty, silent, then stepped inside and closed the door with shaking hands. For a wild moment, she wondered if this was a trap, if Mincio had planted something to frame her, if opening the crate would trigger some new humiliation. But curiosity was stronger than fear. She lifted the lid. Inside was a complete cleaning set, but not the industrial bulk supplies the staff used. These were artisan pieces, a mop with a polished bamboo handle and microfiber head that looked softer than silk, glass spray bottles with brass fixtures, brushes with carved wooden handles, cloths that felt like clouds between her fingers. At the bottom of the crate lay a small card, thick cream paper with a single line of Korean characters in elegant brushwork. Quality tools for quality work. No signature. No explanation. Bella sank onto the edge of her bed, the card trembling in her hands. The mop alone probably cost more than she made in a month. This wasn't staff-issue equipment. This was the kind of thing collectors bought, the kind of thing that belonged in a design magazine. This was impossible. Her eyes drifted to the covered dish. She lifted the lid with cautious fingers and found herself staring at a meal that made her throat close. Slow-braised short ribs with seasoned vegetables, steamed rice still glistening, a small bowl of mayakuk, seaweed soup, the kind her mother used to make. Real food, not the leftover scraps and instant ramen the staff usually subsisted on. It was still warm. Someone had brought this to her room within the last 20 minutes. Someone had known she'd be working late. Someone had been watching. Bella looked around her tiny room as if seeing it for the first time, suddenly aware that privacy might be an illusion. The walls felt thinner. The shadows deeper. She thought of the way Mr. Tay sometimes appeared in hallways she'd just cleaned, silent as smoke. The way his eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. The way the entire household seemed to hold its breath when he entered a room. Her fingers traced the carved handle of the new mop. "Who are you?" she whispered to the empty air. But the room kept its secrets, and the soup was getting cold, and Bella hadn't eaten since breakfast. She picked up the spoon and allowed herself for just one moment to feel protected. A mafia boss doesn't give gifts without a reason. Subscribe and drop your country in the comments. Are you Team Bella or Team Vengeance? The summons came during breakfast, delivered by Jean Wu himself, which meant it wasn't a request. "Mr. Tay wants to see you in his office. Now." The other staff members fell silent, their spoons suspended over their bowls. Bella felt their eyes on her back as she stood, felt the weight of their speculation. Being called to the boss's private office was like being called to the principal. It meant either extraordinary favor or imminent disaster, and in this house the latter was far more common. She followed Jean Wu through the marble corridors, her new mop still hidden in her quarters like a secret she didn't know how to keep. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had she missed something? Had Mincio complained? Had someone seen the gifts and reported theft? The office was all dark wood and glass, perched at the top of the estate like an eagle's nest. Tae Dong stood at the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him. The morning light caught the edges of his tattoos where they emerged from his collar, intricate patterns that looked like smoke and fury made permanent. "Sir." Her voice barely carried across the space. "Close the door." She did, and the soft click felt like a guillotine falling. He turned then, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. Dark, unreadable, the kind of eyes that had watched men beg and hadn't blinked. But there was something else there too, something she couldn't name. "How long have you been working here, Isabella?" The use of her full name startled her. 8 months, sir. And in those 8 months, what have I paid you?" Her throat went dry. "The standard housekeeping rate, sir. It goes directly to Young Enterprises." "I know." He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder, let it fall open. Her life, apparently, summarized in paper and ink. Art history degree. Museum work. Fluent in English, Korean, and French. You were being groomed for a curator position before your father got sick. Bella's hands clenched at her sides. How did he know that? How did he know any of that? "I need an assistant," Tae Dong said, his tone shifting to something businesslike, transactional. "Someone who can manage my schedule, interface with international clients, handle sensitive communications with discretion. Someone I can trust not to sell my secrets to the highest bidder." She stared at him. "Sir, I don't understand. It's a simple offer. You'll work directly for me. Your salary will triple. Your contract with Young Enterprises will be renegotiated." The pause before the last word was heavy with implication. "You'll have your own office. Your own quarters in the main house." The main house. Where Mincio lived. Where Bella would no longer be invisible. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. "Why me?" Something flickered across his face. Brief, almost human. "Because quality should be recognized. And because I'm tired of watching you be treated like something to wipe boots on." The admission hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Bella felt her carefully constructed composure crack at the edges. She wanted to ask about the mop, the meal, whether he'd been watching her all along. But some questions were too dangerous for answers. "When would I start?" "Today." He slid a contract across the desk. "Jean Wu will show you to your new office. You'll accompany me to a meeting this afternoon." Consider it an orientation. Bella reached for the contract with trembling hands, scanning the numbers that seemed too large to be real. This was escape. This was power. This was also placing herself directly in the crossfire between a mafia boss and his mistress. One more thing. Taedong's voice stopped her at the door. Mincio doesn't give orders anymore. Not to you. If she tries, you report directly to me. Understood. Bella nodded, not trusting her voice. She left the office in a daze, following Jinwoo down corridors that suddenly felt different. Less like a prison, more like a chessboard where she'd just been moved from pawn to something far more dangerous. They passed Mincio in the grand foyer. She was arranging lilies in a crystal vase, humming softly to herself. When she saw Bella, her smile was venomous. Running errands for the master now. How adorable. Bella met her eyes, really met them for the first time. Actually, I've been promoted. I'll be Mr. Tae's personal assistant. The lily in Mincio's hand snapped. She's entering his private world, and the mistress is losing her mind. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching. The real danger starts now. They were alone in his office when Bella finally broke. It had been 3 weeks since her promotion. 3 weeks of learning his schedules, his preferences, the coded language of his business dealings. 3 weeks of sitting outside boardrooms while men with dead eyes negotiated territories and percentages. 3 weeks of Mincio's escalating fury manifesting in whispered threats and hallway collisions that looked like accidents. Bella had maintained her composure through all of it. But tonight, after a dinner meeting where Mincio had accidentally spilled wine down the front of Bella's new blouse while serving dessert, something inside her had finally cracked. I don't understand this world. Her voice was quiet but strained, her hands gripping the edge of Taedong's desk. I don't understand the rules. I don't understand why she hates me so much, or why you... She stopped, swallowing hard. Why you're protecting me when it would be easier to just let her have what she wants. Taedong looked up from the contract he'd been reviewing, his expression unreadable in the low light. The city glittered behind him like scattered diamonds. What do you think she wants? Me gone. Me invisible again. Me knowing my place. No. He set down his pen with deliberate precision. She wants you to react. To scream, to cry, to fight back in ways she can weaponize against you. She wants you to give her ammunition. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. But you never do. Do you know why that terrifies her? Bella shook her head, exhausted. Because silence is the most devastating response to cruelty. It gives nothing away. It reveals no weakness. Every time she tries to humiliate you and you simply continue, she loses power. His fingers drummed once against the armrest. You've been doing it instinctively. I'm just teaching you to do it strategically. It doesn't feel strategic. It feels like drowning quietly. Then you don't understand what you're holding yet. Taedong stood, moving around the desk until he was close enough that she could see the fine details of the ink on his throat. A dragon's tail, she realized, disappearing beneath his collar. In my world, the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. They need the noise to fill the space where their actual power should be. But the person who can sit in silence while chaos happens around them? That person is dangerous. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. You walked into my home with your head down, your voice soft, your presence so carefully minimized that most people looked right through you. But I saw something else. I saw a woman who could endure systematic humiliation without breaking, who could maintain excellence in hostile conditions, who understood that survival sometimes requires becoming invisible. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, feather-light. That's not weakness, Bella. That's tactical genius. Her breath caught. No one had touched her like this, with care, with intention. In so long she'd forgotten what it felt like. Mincio operates on emotion. Jealousy, insecurity, the need for validation. She's predictable because she's reactive. His hand dropped, but his gaze held hers. You, on the other hand, have learned to operate beneath the surface. You see everything, say nothing, and move through spaces like water, adapting without announcing your presence. Do you know how valuable that is? In your world. In any world worth surviving. He returned to his desk, but the air between them still hummed with proximity. I'm going to teach you how to use what you already have. How to turn your invisibility into intelligence gathering. How to make your silence a negotiating tool. How to let people underestimate you until the moment you decide to be seen. Bella's hands had stopped shaking. She felt something unfurling in her chest. Not confidence exactly, but recognition. As if he'd named something she'd been carrying without knowing its weight. And Mincio? A ghost of a smile crossed his face, cold and precise. Mincio is learning that visibility without substance is just noise. And noise. He picked up his pen again, returning to his contract. Noise gets drowned out eventually. Bella stood there for a moment longer, feeling the shift happening inside her. The reframing of every silent moment, every swallowed word, every time she'd chosen dignity over defense. Thank you, she said quietly. For seeing me. Taedong didn't look up, but his voice carried across the space between them with unexpected gentleness. I've been seeing you from the beginning, Bella. I'm just teaching you to see yourself. He's turning a maid into a weapon. Don't miss the transformation. Subscribe and comment your location. Who do you think is watching them? The necklace glittered against the gray wool of Bella's spare uniform like a snake coiled in ash. She stood frozen in her doorway, her hand still on the knob, her mind racing through the implications faster than her heart could keep pace. Diamonds and emeralds set in platinum. She'd seen this piece before, draped around Mincio's throat at a charity gala 2 weeks ago. An heirloom from the Beck family, Mincio had announced loudly to anyone within earshot, worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. And now it was here, arranged carefully on Bella's folded clothes, positioned exactly where it would be seen the moment someone opened her closet. Bella's breath came shallow. She stepped inside, closed the door with careful silence, and stood with her back pressed against it. Her new quarters in the main house were larger than her old room, with actual heating and a window that overlooked the garden. But right now they felt like a trap closing around her throat. Don't touch it, her mind screamed. Don't leave fingerprints. Don't give them anything. But it was already too late, wasn't it? The necklace was here. In her private space. Where only she had access, or so it would seem to anyone investigating a theft. She thought of Taedong's lessons. Silence is power. Invisibility is tactical. See everything, say nothing, adapt. But how did you adapt when the trap was already sprung? A knock at her door made her jump, her pulse spiking with adrenaline. She shoved the closet door closed with her hip, smoothed down her blouse, and opened the door to find Mr. Park, the head of housekeeping, looking deeply uncomfortable. Miss Morgan, I apologize for the intrusion, but Miss Mincio has reported a missing piece of jewelry. Very valuable. Very sentimental. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. She's requested that all staff quarters be searched. Security protocol. Of course she had. I understand, Bella said, her voice steady despite the way her hands wanted to shake. Would you like to start with my room? Mr. Park blinked, clearly not expecting cooperation. Behind him, Jean Wu appeared in the hallway, his expression carved from granite. 2 other security personnel flanked him. Witnesses, Bella realized. This was theater. That won't be necessary just yet, Jean Wu said, his voice flat. We'll be conducting searches systematically, starting with the staff wing. But Mincio's voice cut through from down the hall, sharp and ringing. Oh, let's not waste time. Everyone knows who the most recent addition to the main house is. Her heels clicked closer, each step a countdown. After all, it's always the ones you try to elevate who prove they don't deserve it. She appeared at the end of the corridor in a black dress that looked like mourning, her face arranged in an expression of wounded betrayal. Behind her trailed 2 other household staff members, Yuna and Haewon, their eyes wide with the hunger of witnesses to impending disaster. Miss Morgan has been nothing but accommodating, Mr. Park tried weakly. But Mincio swept past him like he was furniture. Then she won't mind proving her innocence. Mincio's smile was all teeth. Will you, Bella? The use of her first name was deliberate, an assertion of dominance, a stripping away of the professional distance Bella had worked to maintain. Every eye in the hallway was on her now, waiting to see if she would crack, if she would run, if she would finally reveal herself as the imposter Mincio had always claimed she was. Bella met her gaze and held it. Of course not. She stepped aside, opening her door fully. Please. Search wherever you need to. Mincio's smile widened, victorious. She glided into the room like she owned it, which in every way that mattered in this house, she had always believed she did. Her eyes swept the space with predatory precision, landing immediately on the closet. Well, she purred. Shall we start with the most obvious place? Her hand reached for the closet door, and Bella, drawing on every lesson Taedong had taught her about silence and strategy, simply stood there and watched. Her face calm, her hands loose at her sides, her expression giving away nothing at all. Even as her world prepared to shatter, she refused to be the one who broke first. The closet door opened. Mincio's hand disappeared inside. And in the hallway behind them, unnoticed by everyone except Bella, a shadow detached itself from the wall and stepped forward into the light. Taedong had been watching all along. The trap is about to spring and Bella's life is on the line. Before the betrayal is revealed, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This is the point of no return. Mincio's fingers closed around the necklace, her face blooming into triumphant vindication. She turned, holding the platinum and emeralds aloft like a prosecutor with blood evidence. Her voice pitched to carry down the hallway. Well, how disappointing. She looked at Bella with theatrical sorrow. And here I thought Mr. Tay's faith in you might actually be justified. That's enough. The voice cut through the air like a blade through silk. Quiet, cold, absolute. Every person in the hallway went rigid. Taedong stepped forward from the shadows, and Bella watched the color drain from Mincio's face in real time. He was dressed simply tonight. Black shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal the full canvas of his tattoos, but he wore his authority like other men wore armor. The two security personnel immediately straightened, their hands moving instinctively to rest positions. Even Mr. Park took an involuntary step back. Mr. Tay, Mincio started, but he raised one hand and she fell silent as if he'd physically covered her mouth. Jean Wu. He didn't look away from Mincio. Show them. Jean Wu pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen twice, and turned it toward the assembled witnesses. Bella could see it from her position. Security footage, time-stamped and damning. Mincio entering Bella's room at 14:47, when Bella had been in a meeting. Mincio opening the closet with a key she shouldn't have possessed. Mincio carefully placing the necklace exactly where it would be found. The footage continued. Mincio leaving. Mincio returning to her own quarters. Mincio emerging 20 minutes later to report the necklace missing. The silence in the hallway was suffocating. 16 cameras, Taedong said conversationally, his hands sliding into his pockets, covering every corridor, every entrance, every private space in this house. Did you really think I wouldn't be watching? Mincio's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The necklace hung from her fingers like an accusation. Or perhaps, he continued, taking a single step closer, you thought I cared so little about what happens under my roof that you could orchestrate a frame this obvious and I'd simply accept your word over evidence? His voice dropped lower, and everyone in the hallway seemed to lean forward involuntarily. Did you think I was stupid, Mincio? Or did you just assume I was indifferent? It's not. She must have. Mincio's composure was crumbling, her perfect facade cracking like porcelain under pressure. Stop. The single word hit like a physical blow. Don't insult me further with lies when I have video evidence of your theft, your trespassing, and your attempted destruction of someone under my protection. Under my protection. The words hung in the air, and Bella felt something shift in the household's understanding of her position. This wasn't just a promotion. This was a declaration. Tae-dong turned to address the assembled staff, his voice carrying with practiced authority. Let me be clear about the hierarchy in this house, since there seems to be confusion. Bella Morgan is my personal assistant. She reports directly to me. She answers to no one else. And anyone who attempts to undermine her, frame her, or make her life difficult will answer to me personally. His eyes swept across each face. Is that understood? A chorus of yes, sir, rippled through the hallway. He turned back to Min Seo, and his expression was arctic. You have 1 hour to pack your belongings. Jin Woo will escort you from the property. Any heirlooms you claim to possess will be catalogued and verified before you leave. If anything is actually missing, we'll discuss theft charges then. You can't. Min Seo's voice broke. After everything, you're throwing me out for her? I'm removing someone who betrayed my trust, violated my home security, and attempted to destroy an innocent person's life for petty jealousy. He tilted his head slightly. The fact that you still think this is about her rather than about your own actions tells me everything I need to know about why you're leaving. Min Seo's face contorted with rage and humiliation. She looked at Bella then, really looked at her, and for a moment Bella saw past the cruelty to the fear underneath. Fear of being replaced. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of losing the only power she'd ever known. But Bella had learned her lessons well. She kept her face neutral, her posture relaxed, her silence absolute. She gave Min Seo nothing to take with her. 59 minutes, Jin Woo said quietly, checking his watch. Min Seo turned and fled, her heels clicking frantically down the marble corridor, the stolen necklace falling forgotten from her hands. Tae-dong picked it up, examined it briefly, then handed it to Mr. Park. Return this to the vault. And change all the security codes. Apparently, we've been too trusting. The hallway cleared quickly after that, staff members vanishing like smoke, eager to escape the blast radius. Only Bella remained, still standing in her doorway, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tae-dong finally looked at her, and something in his expression softened almost imperceptibly. You didn't flinch. You taught me not to. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Good. Now lock your door tonight. Real power makes real enemies. Tae-dong has the footage, and he's ready to burn it all down. Subscribe and shout out your city if you've been waiting for this moment. The envelope was made of heavy cream paper, sealed with red wax that bore the imprint of a dragon. It sat on Bella's desk the morning after Min Seo's exile, catching the early light like a promise, or a proposition. Bella stared at it for a full minute before her fingers finally broke the seal. Inside was a single document, dense with legal language she had to read 3 times to fully comprehend. A settlement agreement. Young Enterprises had accepted payment in full for her outstanding debt. 53 million won, plus accrued interest, plus early termination fees. The contract that had bound her to 2 years of servitude was void. She was free. Beneath the settlement was a second document. An employment contract with Tae-dong's Private Holdings Corporation. The salary made her breath catch. The benefits made her hands shake. But it was the final clause that made her eyes blur with tears she refused to let fall. Employee shall be granted full autonomy in personal and professional decisions, with the understanding that loyalty is given freely, never coerced. A post-it note was stuck to the bottom in handwriting she recognized. Sharp, economical strokes. My office. 10 a.m. T. She arrived at 9:57, her new professional wardrobe still feeling foreign against her skin. Tailored slacks, a silk blouse, heels that clicked with authority rather than servitude. Jin Woo nodded at her from his post outside the door, something that might have been approval flickering across his scarred face. Tae-dong was on the phone when she entered, speaking rapid Mandarin to someone who clearly displeased him. He gestured for her to sit, finished the call with curt finality, and set his phone face down on the desk with deliberate care. You read the documents. Yes. And Bella met his eyes, those dark, dangerous eyes that had watched her scrub floors and now watched her with something far more complicated. Why? Why settle your debt? Why offer you a real position? Why give you the choice to leave if you want? He leaned back in his chair, his tattooed fingers steepled beneath his chin. Because you've earned it. Because the debt was predatory and you deserved better. Because I need someone I can trust, and trust isn't something you can buy or coerce. It has to be freely given. You barely know me. I know you survived 8 months in hostile territory without compromising your integrity. I know you learned to weaponize silence without anyone teaching you. I know you stood in that hallway while Mincio tried to destroy you and you didn't break. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. I know enough. Bella's throat tightened. My family is safe. I've had my people look into your mother's restaurant. The building owner was planning to triple her rent next month. I've purchased the property. Her lease is now fixed rate for the next 20 years. He said it like he was discussing the weather, not casually rewriting her family's future. Your father's medical care has been transferred to a better facility. The bills are handled. I can't. The words stuck. I can't possibly repay. I'm not asking you to repay anything. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace she'd come to recognize. I'm offering you a choice, Bella. You can take the settlement, walk away, start fresh somewhere far from this world. Or you can stay. Work with me. Learn this business from the inside. Become someone who doesn't just survive power, someone who wields it. He was close now, close enough that she could see the fine details of the ink on his throat, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when he was uncertain about something. If I stay, she said carefully, what exactly am I staying as? My partner. My equal. Someone I can trust with everything. The business, the secrets, the decisions that keep people alive. He paused. Someone who can stop me when I go too far. Someone who remembers what it's like to be powerless, so we don't create more victims. That's a lot of faith to put in a former maid. You were never just a maid. You were a woman with a degree and a future who got trapped by circumstances and predatory lenders. There's a difference. His hand moved to her cheek, the touch feather-light, asking permission. I'm not saving you, Bella. I'm investing in someone who was always worth more than the world offered her. She leaned into his palm, just slightly, feeling the calluses that marked him as more than just a man in expensive suits. And if I mess up? If I make the wrong call? Then we fix it together. His thumb traced her cheekbone. That's what partners do. Bella thought of her mother's restaurant, safe now. Her father's care secured. The chains that had bound her for 8 months, broken. She thought of Mincio's face as she'd fled, and Mr. Park's surprised respect, and the way the household now moved around her with careful deference. She thought of the woman she'd been, invisible, silent, surviving. And the woman she was becoming. Seen, strategic, lethal. I'll stay. Taedong's smile was rare and genuine. Good. Because we have work to do. The maid is gone. A queen has risen. Before we head to the final showdown, subscribe and tell me where you're watching. You aren't ready for this ending. The gown was the color of midnight, black silk that moved like water, with a neckline that plunged daringly and a slit that revealed the length of her leg with every step. But it was what lay beneath the silk that had taken Bella's breath away when she'd first seen herself in the mirror. Ink. Delicate, intricate patterns wound up her left arm from wrist to shoulder. Cherry blossoms and geometric lines that echoed the style of Taedong's tattoos but remained uniquely hers. The artist had worked for 3 sessions, translating her story into permanent art. Flowers for resilience, sharp angles for the battles fought in silence, flowing water for adaptation. It's a statement, Taedong had explained when he'd first suggested it. In my world, tattoos are history written on skin. They tell people who you are without words. And when we walk into that gala together, I want everyone to understand exactly who you've become. Now, standing at the top of the marble staircase that swept down into the grand ballroom, Bella felt the weight of 100 eyes turning toward her. The Crimson Gala was the event of the season. Every major player in Seoul's underworld would be here, dressed in tuxedos and gowns, conducting business behind champagne flutes and practiced smiles. Taedong waited at the bottom of the stairs, devastating in a tailored black tuxedo that made his tattoos stand out like art against canvas. When their eyes met, something electric passed between them. Recognition, respect, and something far more dangerous. She descended slowly, deliberately, letting them all see. The former maid. The woman Mincio had pushed to the floor. The invisible ghost who'd scrubbed their marble and absorbed their cruelty. Now walking like she owned every step. Tae Dong extended his hand when she reached him, and she took it, feeling the rough warmth of his palm against hers. His thumb traced over the fresh ink on her wrist, a silent acknowledgement of what the markings meant. "Ready," he murmured low enough that only she could hear. "To make them uncomfortable? Always." His smile was brief but genuine, and then they were moving into the crowd as one entity. His hand at the small of her back, her posture radiating the kind of confidence that came from surviving hell and choosing to return anyway. The whispers started immediately. She caught fragments as they passed. "That's her. The American. I heard she was just staff. Look at the ink she's claimed." An older man in an expensive suit approached, his smile predatory. "Tae Dong SSI, I heard you'd made some personnel changes. This must be the assistant everyone's talking about." "This is Bella Morgan," Tae Dong said, his tone even. "My partner in all business matters. Whatever you need to discuss with me, you can discuss with her." The man's smile faltered. "Partner. I see. How progressive." Bella extended her hand, her grip firm. "I look forward to working with you, Mr. Kwan. I've reviewed your shipping contracts. I think we can find more efficient routes that benefit everyone." She'd done her homework, studied every file, memorized every alliance and grudge. Knowledge was power, and she'd spent 3 months absorbing everything Tae Dong would teach her. Mr. Kwan blinked, reassessing. "Yes. Well, perhaps we should schedule a meeting." "My assistant will coordinate," Bella said smoothly, and watched him retreat into the crowd off balance. Tae Dong's hand tightened almost imperceptibly at her back. Pride, she realized. Or approval. They moved through the gala like that, a unified front. Some people were openly hostile. Others were curious. A few, the ones who understood power when they saw it, showed genuine respect. It was near midnight when Bella noticed the man watching from the balcony. He was older, distinguished, with silver at his temples and a face that reminded her disturbingly of Tae Dong's bone structure. He wasn't drinking, wasn't socializing, just watching them with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Tae Dong," she murmured, angling her body slightly. "Balcony. 11 o'clock. Do you know him?" She felt Tae Dong go still beside her. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. When she glanced at his face, every trace of warmth had vanished. "We need to leave. Now." "Who is he?" "Someone I thought was dead." His hand found hers, gripping tight enough to hurt. "Someone who should have stayed that way." Jinwoo appeared at Tae Dong's shoulder as if summoned, his expression grim. "Sir, we have a situation. The east entrance." The lights went out, all of them simultaneously, plunging the ballroom into absolute darkness. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman screamed. Glass shattered. And in the chaos, Bella felt Tae Dong pull her close, his lips at her ear. "Stay with me. No matter what happens next, stay with me." "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered back, her hand finding the knife she'd strapped to her thigh beneath the silk. Another lesson learned, another tool acquired. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. And on the balcony where the silver-haired man had been watching, now stood a dozen figures in black, their faces covered, their weapons visible. The man himself stood at the center, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the silent ballroom with cold authority. "Hello, son. Did you really think you could build an empire on my corpse without me noticing?" Bella felt Tae Dong's hand tighten around hers as the reality crystallized. The gala, the timing, the unveiling of their partnership. It had all been leading here. To the return of a ghost. To a reckoning neither of them had seen coming. And as the figures on the balcony raised their weapons, Bella realized her transformation from invisible maid to powerful partner was about to face its most dangerous test. The night had only just begun. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this journey. Your support is what allows these stories of resilience and justice to come to life. If you felt the power of Bella's transformation, let us know in the comments. Which part did you love the most? The moment Tae Dong first stepped in, or seeing Bella finally claim her throne? Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, give this video a like, and res-hair it with someone who loves a true story of rising from the ashes.